passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, everybody. Josh Brown here, back for another episode of Franchise Euphoria. And, this week we're going to talk about something that's really interesting, and it may be the title of this week's episode, Is That a Lobster? May have caught you off guard, but there's a story behind that that I'm going to share with you. And we're going to talk about essentially identifying and how to unleash and identify lobsters for your business. And you might be wondering what that is all about. Well, let me tell you. This past weekend, we were at a family lake house, and actually took a little bit extra time, took the day off yesterday to just kind of unwind, spend some time with family. And as is often the case, when you do that, even though you're not working, you end up learning things, and you end up realizing things that can benefit not only you, but your business. And you learn things just by paying attention and being active and being present with your family or with your friends or whatnot. Well, this particular story that ties into the title of the episode today, Is That a Lobster? We're at the lake house, and my oldest daughter, Sophia, is 5.5 years old. And she's a really creative and curious and sharp kid. And she has such an imagination that she uses every single day, and just sees things that maybe I don't see, and really is creative like that. And so imagine a lake house on the water, and there's a big deck that's attached to the second level of the lake house. And so we're walking around the deck to head down the stairs to go down for a boat ride. And we're walking, and we're just kind of talking, and all of a sudden Sophia says, "Daddy, is that a lobster?" And I just kind of chuckled, and I looked down, and there was a branch just on the deck that almost looked like it had tentacles coming off of it. It had little branch-like tentacles. And I said, "No, sweetie, that's not a lobster." But I looked at it, I go, "But boy, it looks like one." And it just kind of struck me, because I thought, man, I could look at that same branch for an hour straight by myself, and I would have never thought that it looked like a lobster. Yet in the eyes of a child, in the eyes of from somebody's different perspective, my daughter Sophia instantly looked down and said, "Is that a lobster?" And it got me thinking about not only the imagination that the children have and how creative kids can be. It got me thinking about different perspectives, and the different perspectives that we all as individuals bring not only to our daily lives, but to our businesses, to our work environments. And are we as entrepreneurs, are we as business owners really taking the time to identify or listen to other people who are identifying the lobsters in our business? Because after all, when I look down, I just see a stick, but my daughter sees a lobster. And it's just kind of fascinating to me, and it led me to think of all the applications that has to entrepreneurship and to business ownership, and to how somebody manages a company. And I want to talk about 3 ways today that you as a business owner or a manager can unleash and identify the lobsters in your business. And I think first and foremost, it comes down to culture. Have you identified and created a culture in your business that lends itself to different perspectives? So often I talk about on this show tactics and strategy and how you get clear on your mission, your core competency, and how you stay focused on what your task at hand is, and what your business actually is, and don't stray from that. Yet I think that's missing a central component, and that is you can have the best strategy in the world, you can have the best tactics in the world, you can have the most clear focus and vision in the world. And yet, if you don't have anybody buy into it, if you don't have a culture that invites different perspectives, boy, you're really going to be missing out at some point in time. I mean, because that really, how other people view things is vital to your business. And so I think it is so important, no matter what business you have or what business that you're going to buy, whether it's a franchise or an independent business, doesn't matter. You have to create and instill a culture that lends itself to different perspectives. Well, how do you do that? Well, that leads to the second way, and that is through engagement. You have to talk to your workers, your employees, your teammates, your partners. You have to constantly get their feedback. Not only their feedback, though, you need to also get their input. You need to schedule that out to where you have regular scheduled intervals. I know a lot of people think that they have regular engagement and great engagement with their teams, and it's just sort of sporadic. Maybe they run into them in the hall and they ask them how things are going. That's not the kind of engagement I'm talking about. I'm not talking about open social dialogue within the company. That's something different, and that's important. I'm talking about scheduled, consistent engagement where you actually have a plan as to questions that you want to ask your team, perspectives that you want to gain, and without dictating what those outcomes are, and having the team buy into the concept that anything goes. That's really where the magic happens. It's interesting. I heard a interview with the late Steve Jobs, and I was watching some videos on YouTube, and he was talking about the structure of Apple, and he said, we don't have any committees. There is not one committee that we have at Apple. What we have are teams of people built around different sectors of the business. And essentially what his job at Apple was to meet and engage with all those different teams throughout a day, throughout a month, throughout a year, and not only get a pulse as to what's going on, but to be actively in the conversation, to be actively debating back and forth about ideas and where they were going and what they were doing and new products. And, as everybody knows, Steve Jobs had a very, very strong viewpoint. And the interviewer, when he was talking to him, said, "So did anybody else's ideas carry the day? Like, did you ever lose?" And he sort of laughed and said, "Of course. I mean, are you kidding me?" He said, we would have heated discussions. And he said, I was just as passionate about my ideas as everybody else was. But that was the point of the exercise. And if you as a leader, if you as an owner don't allow the ideas to win, as opposed to the thought that it's your idea that wins. In other words, the best idea wins out. It doesn't matter who it comes from. And so it was just fascinating to me, because I got the sense that he did, and the Apple team has done such a good job at creating the kind of sectors within their business that aren't committees necessarily, but they're just open dialogues about where they're going, what they're doing, how they're going to get there, and they encourage everybody's perspective. I mean, how often is it in business models and in corporate structures where, really all the team leader wants, or all the executive wants, is everybody to buy in to their vision? They're not really looking for the input of their team. They're looking for the buy-in of their team. And while that works well in certain ways, obviously if you have a good plan in place and you want the implementation, you need that buy-in. But I would argue you need the input just as important. You need the input and the honest feedback from your people, because they provide a perspective that's completely unique to themselves. And it's not something you can teach. It's not something you can train. It's based off of each person's business experiences, personal experiences, life experiences, and environment. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think it's so important, and ties into that second piece, which is engagement. And that's how you do it. You do it in a structured yet unstructured way. You need to structure consistent ways in which your team can get together and have an open dialogue, yet you don't want those meetings to be so structured to where each person doesn't feel as though they can add their own unique voice. I think the third thing and third way that you can unleash and find the lobsters in your business is through commitment. I mean, you have to show the commitment to your team, to your customers, to your people, that you're there for the long haul and that you're committed to the process, you're committed to the business, and you're committed to the goal. And I think that ties into the buy-in from your teammates, from your, I call employees teammates, because after all, that's what they are. I mean, if you want to build a culture where you have teammates, not just people who are, yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am. You want people who are thinking they're part of the process and they are part of that process. And part of the way that you get people to do that is you show commitment on your end, because people then will either buy into it or not buy into it. And again, they're not buying into the exact way in which you're getting there. I mean, perhaps they are, but what they're really buying in is to you as a leader. And I think having commitment to your business, to a process, to a goal is huge. So I really think that for you to identify the lobsters in your business, you really need to pay close attention to culture, to engagement, and to your commitment to the overall process. And it's amazing to me that just that one comment from Sophia this past weekend just struck me, just really struck something in me. I go, man, that is just so instructive, that literally she sees a lobster where I see a stick. And what do other people see where we see other things? And how can that be instructive to all of our businesses and to everything we do on a daily basis? And I think people inherently understand that, but I don't think people work that into their business process. I think we get so hung up, all of us I think do get hung up on tactics, implementation, that we don't take time to find out the things that maybe we don't know that others might just have they certainly have a unique, different, and perhaps better perspective on. So hopefully this episode was valuable for you. As always, would love to hear from you. Josh at franchiseeuphoria.com. I don't go over people's questions each and every week. It just kind of varies from week to week, but I certainly respond quickly via email. And so would love to hear from you, and look forward to you tuning in to our next episode. And until then, I hope you are dreaming big for yourself and for your businesses, and looking forward to an optimistic and really incredible future for yourself and your business. Till next time, happy franchise.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.